down and my shoulders ache to the bone. Murena waka, ule sedila pilo yaga, sedilaka.
Yeah.
I think you expressed that your mother didn't. I think in the next line that she couldn't, from her 9 to 5. You're remembering her 9 to 5.
Yes.
She couldn't give you the love that you wanted.
Yes,
she couldn't
yes.
do for a family that the things that we imagine other parents doing for them.
And I would say it wasn't only because of her 9 to 5. It was also mainly because of where she comes from and how she was raised herself. Because her 9 to 5 actually gave her a lot of extra time. My mother was a teacher. Was working as a teacher. She's retired now, so she's living that retired life. But when she came home at the same time, she was exhausted because she's dealing with a number of kids. There's a lot of stress, and she doesn't have someone to return home to, like a husband, where she can let off some steam and express how the day was and how strenuous it was. And we didn't have the patience to listen.
You all were kids.
Exactly. We were young and we didn't understand. We didn't have the emotional intelligence. It's a lot different now though. So that was me expressing mainly the fact that when she came home, she didn't have the time to teach us. When you wake up in the morning, you greet your brothers and sisters. When after we've cooked, we all sit together and eat on the same table. After this is all those things. We didn't really have the time to learn that from her.
Wow, bro.
Yeah.
And I think then you then continue. I think I'm not saying to shift the blame, but I love the one reason I did this channel. I love how people use the use of words in poetry in these poetic pieces.
Yeah.
So you go and you say it's due to a lack of a consistent father figure.
Yes.
So you just explained that none of you grew up with your fathers.
Yes.
So, but when you say consistent, do you have like father figures that will come around or?
Not necessarily. Well, in a way, because what I mean by that is, so my little sister, her dad was staying with us, right, for like a while though. I was probably still in primary when he left because of his own issues. Sorry. So but the older I got, there were, I think, people who play whether you know it or not, or whether you like it or not, there will be someone who considers you that figure to some extent. So there were people that I basically gave that responsibility without them knowing, like my pastor, for example, at the church that I attended. So my pastor played that role a lot in the messages he preached, and also the men within the congregation. But obviously there was no consistent father figure.
Okay, now I get it.
Yes. And also I have to mention this, in that in the piece itself, I'm not really placing blame on the lack of a consistent father figure, which is why I use the word perhaps. It might have, I suppose I am placing blame per se, because it's important for us to acknowledge that the circumstances we grow up in shape us.
That's true.
Right? We're not superhuman.
We don't just grow at like 18, you now find your life.
Exactly.
No, that's true. Wow, thanks for explaining that. Wow, and then you go on now to, I think it's like the second part of the piece, or your second verse, because it's a piece. You start by saying you're still broken inside. Yet society still expects colossus out of you.
Yes.
What is this now? What point are you now at?
So moving from the first verse into the second verse, and especially the first verse ends with that line, perhaps it was the lack of a consistent father figure. So going into the second verse, I wanted to pick up from the first to say that I'm still broken inside, and I'm trying to collect the pieces. So Colossus is from X-Men, for those Marvel fans out there. Hala, wada. Right? So Colossus is from the X-Men. He's the guy who turns into metal. And then if you've watched the Deadpool movie, he stays metal for some weird reason. Not true to the comics. I don't read comic books.
It's Deadpool. You do.
Just the disclaimer. Yeah, so Colossus is this metallic figure, someone who's metal, who no matter how hard you hit him, no matter what angle you hit him from. And it's also quite interesting that he moves from being human into being this metallic figure, because he moves from something fragile that can break into this immovable object. Yeah, so that's where that comes from.
So is that how now you were seeing yourself, that you are still
No. That's why I'm saying society expects a Colossus out of me. So when society, here's the thing, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. You know, people don't ask you where you grew up. People don't ask you they don't know your story, your origin, your story, your origin story. They don't know whether you were abused at home, whether you were, neglected. They don't know like whether home is a shack where you come from, and then they're gonna ask you questions like, so when you're getting married, when are you leaving this job and moving to the next one, when are you getting your degree? Those are society's expectations that in the second verse especially I began to express, because that's what I felt people wanted from me.
You're going out to the community now, you're not just at home. Wow, that's
exactly.
That's so beautiful, bro.
Exactly.
You know how to relate to all of us. Okay, we continue now to say, to discover, I think this is now, I don't know, a reflection not just on yourself, but on the same community that you were talking about. You say, to discover it is hard to discover your weakness and to rep self-inflicted wounds.
So that one is I think is a very interesting one. I think for a lot of us, actually, it comes back from, if you've grown up in a family that is unstable in itself, it leaves you with wounds. It leaves you broken. It leaves you incapable of doing some things, like being vulnerable. So as a result, when you grow up, you don't know how to deal with those wounds, because first of all, most of us don't even know that they're there. You understand? So what I was especially expressing in that was to say that it's especially difficult for us to admit that they're there, because now people will continue telling you that, oh, you're so arrogant. Man, you don't consider other people. When you talk in conversations, you hog the conversation. And those are the wounds showing themselves. So now you need to mutter the strength to identify them in yourself as much as others have identified them in you. And then begin to wrap them yourself. There's no nurse.
There's no nurse.
Right? Yeah.
Wow, bro. Okay, then that's interesting. That's how you explained it. Because in the next line you say, all communities are forests.
Yes.
One tree ablaze is hazardous to the rest.
Yes.
So doesn't that then go saying that we are all due to each other? Like we are all, we are a community, so we should all be communal.
Exactly. I suppose in that particular line, I was also reminding myself of the fact that I can't keep blaming society, but also because society is also a result of where everybody within society is a product of where they come from. The comments they make, the questions they ask, they also have a story of origin as individuals. So narrowing it down to the fact that, you know what, we're all products of these. So society is a forest. Society is not an ocean. And I think we often think of society like we think of an ocean or the desert, because the desert is just sand. Right? And the difference between a desert and a forest is the fact that a forest is made up of individual trees, and those trees grow branches, and those branches grow leaves, and the rest of how beautiful a forest looks from above will be dependent on how each individual tree, how healthy it is. And so if there are a few unhealthy trees, you can see it from an aerial view that over there
we're missing some branches.
Exactly. So it's also just to give you that perspective that listen, your community and your broader society at large, they are all of us. When you talk about society, remember that you are speaking of individuals that make a collective, and they all have an origin story just like you do.
Damn. That is okay. Okay, now I think that's you explained very well that we have. But can you please elaborate when you say we have an illusion of independence? Everyone is chasing independence, bro. Like now you're telling us we all cute to each other.
Yes, exactly. You're especially living in the millennial era.
Yeah,
like the 21st century is the worst. Like this thing of handles and personal brands. I don't think they're a bad thing. I think if when they're used, we've overdone it. That's what I think. Actually, I think it is healthy to have an identity. It's exactly why I use the name Given Illustrative and not my Given Masilela, which is my actual surname. Because if you Google Given Masilela, you'll find a whole bunch of them. In fact, back then when I wasn't as prominent or as my presence wasn't as loud online, I Googled for Given Masilela, and some Given Masilela who was in prison for rape.
Bro,
so that, you see what I'm saying?
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that was what kind of or rather, that is a very good example of how it is important to push yourself as an individual, your selfies, your pages, and all of that. But at the same time, it has made us narcissists. It has made us lose sight of the fact that we are beings that are affected by other people around us. So the church you go to, especially your family,
your community.
Yeah, so we are not this illusion of being independent, like in the sense that this is my family. We're wealthy, we have money. But if you're the only family that has money within that community, then we have a problem.
We have a problem in that
because it's unsustainable.
Okay, cool. Then we continue now with the representation of society. When you say, I think you've mentioned this with the tree illustration.
Yes.
That if you can see one of the branches not specifying the whole forest, then you can see that there's a problem. Because you say society's problem is not. Society itself is not just the problem, but it's the family structure.
Yes.
So are you then going back to your same example that you made, and then applying it to the whole community as a whole now, your family tree to the community as a whole now?
So that comes back to the movie 300.
Yes.
And how the Spartan warriors were brought up in such a way that they wanted quality rather than quantity. You understand? So it really comes back to that thing of, if you are mindful of the fact that if we have good family units, and if we put our energy in building good family units, then it will reflect in broader society. Basically, I think actually it's as basic as that. Okay, no, it's understandable as that. So also coming back to the line of setting one tree ablaze is hazardous to the rest. So if you burn one family unit, that family unit, if, for example, if I grew up in a household where solving problems with violence or speaking at the top of my voice and not taking the time to listen to what my siblings are saying, it'll reflect when I'm on a taxi and someone drops my money and I'm like, what?
That's true.
You know what I mean? So it'll reflect, this is what you do where you come from, or in your family, or either in your household or your community, right?
I think in his book, Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell made a similar example to say, now it was for a whole community that was involved in violence, that was violence across the whole spectrum. That was started by two families fighting. But now, 100 years later, like the people who grew up from that community are still as angry as back then. So he's saying there is that connection between where you grow up and how you connect with the rest of the world. So
exactly. And that's one of my favorite books actually, of like the Outliers. That's a perfect explanation of it. Because it's we as people, we don't understand the extent to which we are actually vulnerable and also malleable. We're easily influenced we're easily influenced. So it's much like clay. If you take clay and you use your fingers
you mold it
into whatever shape,
that you
the people who are around you will do that to you, whether you like it or not.
Especially if you're still growing and you are in that community.
Sedilaka, Lord, brighten my way home. Navigate me through this maze and help me.